Okay, so we are going to work with craving. And I'm going to talk about craving in terms of a number of different things, but I'm going to preface it with a little personal story around addiction and recovery and craving. So I suppose you could say I have an addictive personality, or had, because I don't really think that's true of me anymore. But for a variety of reasons, I was very apt to seek dopamine. I was very apt to seek ways to check out. And I was also surrounded by adults who had similar ways of being while I was growing up. Namely, my father, who was an alcoholic and was unable to stop drinking when he was told, hey, if you don't stop drinking, you're going to die. And so it ultimately killed him. Uh, Cancer was is what's on the certificate, but alcoholism is really what took him out. And I grew up watching addiction. I grew up watching it bottom him out multiple times. And so when he actually died, there was absolutely a part of me that had been prepared for it for a very long time. I also learned at a really early age that he wasn't drinking because he wanted to necessarily. He was drinking because he needed to, because a craving of mind and body made him do that. And there's different models for addiction, and I'm not going to get into my opinion about them necessarily, but I will say that I'm grateful that I was taught that when I was a child, that I was given the model of addiction as a disease. And again, I have varied opinions on that, but I will say that it was incredibly helpful for me as a kid to be like, oh, this isn't because I'm a bad daughter or a bad kid. This is because he can't help it. And so I was introduced to what craving can do really early on. I remember when I was 12, he went into rehab because he'd had, I think, like 3 DUIs at that point. No, that was later. He went to jail when I was 14 because he had so many DUIs. Before that, they gave him the option to go to rehab, and then, he kind of continued with his addiction. But he did get sober in rehab, and I remember visiting him. And when someone gets sober, their eyes change. And I'm not going to say that you immediately are happier and everything's better. In some cases, life gets a lot worse for a while, but your eyes do come back on in a way that they really can't when you're in your addiction. So, I watched his eyes change. I watched him sort of actually start getting really creative. He was like writing poetry and drawing and things like this. And then he, came out of rehab, and I remember one morning we were taken over there to spend our weekend with him, and he seemed different. And we're walking down the street and he's talking to a friend. I wanted to say he was on the phone, but we didn't have cell phones in 1992. But he was talking to a friend, and I heard him go, yeah, fell off that wagon. And he had a mug from his from his rehab that was like had the logo on it. And I saw him just like go, yeah, fell off the wagon and like pour the mug out as to say, you know, it's his coffee, but as to say, like poured out his recovery and his sobriety. And I knew what it meant. And I understood at that age. Like I already got it because I had learned, but that's not the only reason I got it. I also got it because by that age, I already had a lot of addictive behaviors. Hey, my little dog is interested in this conversation. He's craving a squirrel outside. He wants to go chase it. So I had addictive behaviors around mostly boys, but not only boys. Every page of my journal was about this cute boy or that cute boy. And I just want a boyfriend so bad. Why can't I have a boyfriend? And it was like an obsession in my mind of like this, wanting this feeling. And when the boy I liked sat next to me or talked to me or something like this, I ran into him somewhere out in the world, I would get that rush. I would get that hit. But I also had addictive behaviors around food that exhibited as eating disorders, disordered eating. And so there were other things too, other behaviors. So I already kind of like had a good sense of it. But by the time I was 27, I had lived all of my teen years and all of my 20s up until then, just falling deeper and deeper into addiction. And while the end of my drinking career wasn't that dramatic, I was barely drinking at the time, what I was experiencing was a huge amount of craving. And I knew what drinking would do to me. I knew what it would do to my relationships. I couldn't stop, but I couldn't keep doing it. And there was this craving thing. So I do not want to say that just a meditation practice is going to cure your addiction. Whatever it is, your phone, narcissists, food, gambling. I mean, the list goes on, obviously, right? We have a lot of ways in which we can get lost in addictive behaviors. So will this cure that? Well, I don't know, maybe it could, but it will certainly support you. It will certainly support you if you are in the process of letting go of an addictive behavior, or if you need extra support in recovery from an addictive behavior. So for me, while I wasn't really immersed in my meditation practice at this time, I was using meditation to move through craving. And the first time I really remember doing that, though I'm sure there were probably other times, but the one that really sticks out in my mind is I had been in an abusive relationship, in which I was a mess as well, but I wasn't being treated very well. And it was a pattern I had been in, and I had to leave the relationship, but I didn't want to. And it was really hard to do it. And I remember sitting with a group of friends, and I was just missing her so much. I was just missing her so much, but really I wasn't missing her. Really, I was like caught in limbic resonance and just wanting to get back to what was normal, which was somebody telling me how much I sucked, because that felt like home to me to a certain extent. And I was sitting there and it just hurt so bad. Like it was like my whole chest was just like, oh. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to like lean into the feeling. And I didn't know that I was like doing a mindfulness practice, but what I did is I just got very curious about what was going on here. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, it's like these hands reaching out of my chest and trying to pull something in. And so I just started feeling it and feeling it and like leaning into it and surrendering to it. And eventually it started to change. It started to actually feel pleasurable. This rich, layered sensation. As it separated from the story in my mind, as it separated from the ex-girlfriend, and it started to be just this moving, changing thing. Now, a number of years later, when I got really into meditation, I was told that those sensations I was feeling could be considered flow in the Shinzen system. They could also be considered, impermanence, the arising and passing, the constant change. And so that ended up being a go-to for me for working with craving. When I got sober, one of the big supports in early sobriety was recognizing those sensations and letting them just be sensations and riding the wave of them. It's also what helped me to quit smoking. I remember pulling into a 7-Eleven and I was like, I'm just gonna get a pack because I don't want to quit anymore. I've decided I don't want to quit anymore. And I sat there in the gas station and felt those feelings, this thing in the chest. And it was in other parts of the body too, but for me, there's like a lot of craving sensations in chest and throat and face, though it could be your whole body too. And there's an expansion and contraction of those sensations. And when you're in a craving for a substance, for a person, whatever it is, it gets really, 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 really big. The sensation grows and grows and grows and grows. And the mind is like, okay, I have to do the thing. This feeling is so big. I have to do the thing. Of course I do. But actually, you can ride that wave. You can feel that sensation expand and expand and expand. And eventually, it's going to contract. It's going to dissipate. What I often say to folks who are quitting smoking is, before you smoke the cigarette, follow the craving. Be with the craving. And ride at least one wave of craving. The thoughts are going to do what they do. And for this particular exercise, we're just going to put the thoughts aside. It's okay that they're there. And we're going to come to the body. So just come to the body and feel how intense the sensation gets. And when it settles down, which it will, decide if you want to smoke the cigarette, or if you want to ride another wave, or if you're ready to just go do something else. And if you smoke the cigarette, that's fine. Really, really enjoy it. Really be present for it. Really feel it. Otherwise, what's the point? Let yourself feel the nicotine hit your bloodstream. Let yourself enjoy the ritual of it. And then maybe next time, ride 2 waves, ride 3 waves. We can do the same thing with any sort of addictive behavior, but I want to just put a caveat out there. If your addictive behavior is around something like Xanax or heroin, something like this, you need support. Don't ride it out alone, because that can be dangerous. And so this can be a support for those kinds of addictions and the cravings associated with them. But you also want to get the needed medical support for going through a detox. So I just put that out there just, for disclaimer. But a lot of most other cravings, you can absolutely ride out without a hospital bed. And you can train yourself to be able to do it. And over time, those feelings of craving can actually become quite pleasurable. It can feel really good to crave. In Buddhism, there can be a lot of negative connotation around this idea of craving. I have made great friends with craving, and that's pretty much out of necessity because there's a lot of things I can't have. It's not just alcohol and cigarettes, and I don't really want alcohol and cigarettes at this point, so that's fine. But there's a lot of foods that my body can't handle, and I've needed to work through, beliefs I'm addicted to and patterns I'm addicted to, and to learn to actually enjoy craving makes it a heck of a lot more fun. So it might take time to find pleasure in craving, but if you continue to stay curious and present with the sensations of craving, you probably will start to taste that pleasure eventually. And then maybe down the line, your whole relationship with craving will change. Maybe it'll just be waves of sensation that you get to ride. And then over time, these things that perhaps serve a purpose and maybe served a great purpose at one time of helping us survive the unsurvivable or get through something that we didn't feel equipped to get through, they can start to fall away. And we can begin to receive great satisfaction from the simple, easy beauty of just this moment. It's really the best drug there is. Just this moment, just here now. So go ahead, close your eyes. For those of you who are joining live, I am going to go a little bit over. So please take care of yourself. And if you have a hard out, go ahead and set a timer for yourself, because I am going to extend just a bit here. And I don't want to make you late for anything. So again, closing your eyes if you want to, but they can also be open. And you may have something that you're working with already. There may be some kind of craving that you want to get curious about and want to develop a new relationship with. Now, if you don't have something top of mind, cool. There's potentially something that has a subtle amount of craving in it for you. But also, I'll do a little sensitizing exercise here to begin. So we're going to start with the breath. Please only do this if it's okay for your body, and listen to your body and breathe when you need to breathe. We're going to do a bit of breath retention if you so wish. So as we breathe in, we're going to feel the oxygen pouring in, and then as we breathe out, we'll feel the breath moving out, and then we're going to hold. And we're going to wait until the body starts craving another breath. And I don't want you to hold until you get lightheaded or get a headache or something. Just hold until that craving for air maybe gets to like a 5, if that works for you. So breathing in and breathing out. And now hold. And as you hold, notice the mind might immediately be saying, I can't do this. I need to breathe. So we're going to put aside the mind and just feel the craving at the body level. Feel it start to rise, start to get really big. Now, this one's not going to pass. You need to take the next breath. So go ahead and take that next breath. And then we'll do it again. And once you have your next exhale, just hold again and just get curious here. What does it feel like to crave? You'll probably notice emotional sensations arising. You might get mad or sad or scared. So again, we're just doing a little bit of this. We're not doing 2-minute breath hold or anything. Just could be 5 seconds is enough for you. Let's just do that one more time. Getting very present and see if you can relax around the craving. Surrendering to it, allowing it, welcoming it, making friends with it. Good. So that's just a little sensitization practice for craving. Now we'll move into working with some other aspect of craving. Now, if there's nothing coming up for you that elicits craving, just work with noticing the sensations in the body. In particular, the flow sensations, the movement and the change, the expansion and contraction occurring inside the body on subtle and not so subtle levels. By doing this, you practice for when a craving does arise. You've attuned yourself to these kinds of sensations, and maybe you can let go of it being about, I have to do that thing that I'm craving. And instead, it becomes about, how curious can I be about this sensation? Now, if something you're craving is something that you actually really need, like sleep, or maybe you actually haven't eaten yet today and you're hungry and your body needs some food. Maybe you're lonely and you want human touch and there's a craving for that. None of these cravings are wrong. We don't need to eradicate these kinds of desires. It's human. But we can still work with them. We can still work with them and get curious and use them as a way to develop this new relationship with the process of craving. So to be clear, if you want to use something to trigger craving, that's totally fine. You can think about potato chips or some sort of sweet treat, or maybe some substance that you're working to change your relationship with. But I do encourage you to take good care. So if the thing that you're craving is really triggering for your nervous system, maybe choose something a little more easy on you. You don't have to go right to the hardest thing. Unless the hardest thing is just present because you're in the process right now of in real time really dealing with craving associated with something that perhaps you'd like to change, perhaps you'd like to let go of. Notice where the craving is in your body. Let go of the judgment of the craving. We all crave. It's normal, it's healthy. How we relate to our craving and how much power it has over us, that's a different story. But craving in of itself is not some horrible thing. So we take it nice and easy. We're light with ourselves, not exiling the part of us that craves. Instead, we're getting curious, feeling the bodily sensations associated with this craving. Can you be right here, right now with this feeling? Can you notice how it is not constant? Even if it is quite persistent, it's going to have peaks and valleys. Notice that. Feel that. As powerful as these feelings can be, especially with addiction to substances and other potentially damaging behaviors, it is just sensation. It's not good or bad, it's just sensation. As a reminder, if you're not having any craving experiences and there's not any that are easily accessible, then just be with these rising and passing sensations in your body. When you get pulled into your mind, come back to the body. With craving, the mind is what ultimately pushes us to do the thing that we want to stop doing. And there's lots of ways of working with the mind, but with this practice, all we're doing is just setting it aside. And you might have to do that over and over and over and over again. That's why we call this a practice. We are practicing. Once you put the thoughts aside, the thoughts that say, I shouldn't do it, but I want to do it, I'm going to do it. The thoughts that maybe later judge us for doing it. They're also impermanent phenomena, just like the sensations. We're just going to put them aside and come back to the sensation. What do you feel in your face? What do you feel in your throat? What do you feel in your chest, your stomach? What do you feel down in your lower body? We are not trying to eradicate these feelings. We are getting curious about them. We're getting to know them. Maybe we're even making friends with them. And perhaps we reach a point where we can surrender to them as sensation. And in that surrendering, we actually gain freedom. We're no longer solidifying these sensations into something that can control us. Instead, we're experiencing them for what they are. Simply sensation. And you notice different aspects of the sensation. Does it have temperature? My dog's craving for the squirrel has temperature, I think. He's heating up in my lap. Does it vibrate? Does it undulate? Does it jump around to different parts of the body? Most likely, it expands and contracts. Craving tends to do that. Well, everything tends to do that, but it's particularly palpable with craving. In that expansion and contraction, can you notice the pace at which it expands and contracts? Can you notice the area of the body where this expansion and contraction occurs. In deconstructing the sensation in this way, it becomes even more possible to experience it as just a sensation, not a command. And of course, by experiencing it as just sensation, by setting the thoughts about it aside, the suffering falls away. That solidification of self. I need this thing. Dissolves. And then there's no one there to be suffering. There's no one there to need that thing. Instead, there's just waves of impermanent phenomena coming and going. And as you lean in more deeply, you may start to arrive right here, right now. Just this. Just this fresh, new, beautiful moment of being, which is already this next fresh, new, beautiful moment of being. Here where there is no addict, here where there's no one to respond to the commands of craving. Here where we are set free into the pleasure of being. What if every moment of craving, what if addiction itself were a direct path to waking up right here, right now. All of the aspects of self that come together to create that experience of, I am this person who has this addictive behavior around this thing. Each of those can join the being, the just being. This is a radical path. It's a challenging path. But if you found yourself in a loop of addictive behavior, why not use it as a path to awakening? And then in the meantime, find yourself unshackled, those weights tied to your ankles released, and you're floating up to the surface. You're swimming up to the surface, breaking through. Taking that big, deep breath. Of a new way of life. And depending on what you are recovering from, it may take many, many times breaking through the surface. But if I can be alcohol-free for 16 years, I believe that it is possible for you to have freedom from whatever it is that has got a hold on you and has been pulling you down. If I can do it, so can you. Taking a nice deep breath. Maybe letting it out with a sigh. One more. Oh. And if your eyes are closed, as you're ready, you can start to blink them open. Taking in your environment, maybe bringing a little movement into your body. This is an ongoing journey. And my hope for you is that you bring so much love and compassion and patience and kindness into that journey because you deserve it. Thank you for practicing with me.